You bring down the deer. You tracked it for 3 days. 3 days of following blood and broken grass, sleeping cold, eating nothing, until you got close enough once to drive a spear through it. You nearly died twice doing it. By every rule that should matter, this animal is yours. Except it isn't. The second you drag it back to camp, it stops being yours. Hands reach in. People who did nothing reach past you and take the best cuts. The ones who didn't hunt today. The ones who didn't hunt yesterday. The ones who haven't hunted in months. And when you open your mouth to complain, they laugh at you. They don't fight you for the meat. They don't threaten you. They mock you for thinking you were owed something, for acting like the kill made you special. This wasn't kindness, it was a rule, and the rule was strictly enforced. So here's the question at hand. For almost the entire span of human existence, there was never quite enough food to go around. And when there isn't enough, someone has to decide who eats and who doesn't. So who decided, and how? The answer is the exact opposite of what you'd guess, and it's the reason you're alive to guess it. Start with what you already believe, because you do believe it, even if you've never said it out loud. When food is scarce, the strong eat first. The provider eats first. The one who made the kill, the one the group can't afford to lose, they get the best, and what's left trickles down. The weak wait. The weak get scraps. This isn't a cruel idea, it's the obvious one. And it's how it works for almost every animal that has ever lived. The lion that makes the kill eats first and eats most. The chimpanzee at the top of the troop eats before the chimp at the bottom. Strength eats. Weakness waits. The oldest rule among social animals on Earth. And one species, one strange, soft, slow species, turned that rule completely upside down. On purpose. Every single time. Us. An anthropologist named Christopher Boehm spent his career studying this, and in his 1999 book Hierarchy in the Forest, he gave the upside-down rule a name. The reverse dominance hierarchy. In every other primate, the strong dominate the weak. In a human band, Boehm found, the many gang up to dominate anyone who tries to rise above the rest. The group flips the pyramid. Power flows backward, on purpose, held down by everyone at once. For hundreds of thousands of years, the humans who survived built their entire world around a rule so backwards it shouldn't have worked. The person who got the food had the least right to keep it. To understand why, you have to understand one brutal fact about that world. Alone, you died. Not in a season. In days. You can't bring down a large animal by yourself, can't sleep and keep the fire and watch for predators at once. One bad wound, one fever, one cold night with no one beside you, and you were finished. The group wasn't your community. It was the only reason your heart was still beating. And that's the blade underneath everything that happened next. If you need the group to live, the worst thing that can happen to you isn't going hungry for a night. It's the group deciding it doesn't need you. That fear is what made the impossible upside-down rule possible. Here's how it actually worked. Anthropologists have a name for the taking itself: tolerated theft. When a hunter brought meat back to camp, he didn't own it. He couldn't hoard it, couldn't even decide who got which piece. The group simply took it, loudly, openly, as a right, not a favor. The successful hunter often ended up with one of the worst cuts of his own kill, and the people doing the taking included the ones who had contributed nothing at all. Now, you're picturing the hunter as the camp's hero, the reliable provider. He wasn't. Researchers spent years tracking the Hadza of Tanzania, who still hunt and forage the way humans did for most of our existence. A Hadza hunter brings down a big animal on roughly 1 to 3% of days, one large kill a month, sometimes one every 3 months. On the other 97 days out of 100, even the best hunter in camp comes home with nothing. The whole heroic image of the mighty hunter feeding his people, it's almost a myth. The truth is, a man who fails, over and over, for weeks, and gets fed by the group the entire time he's failing. And when he finally does connect, the meat is ripped from his hands and spread across everyone, including the men who failed alongside him and the men who didn't even go. Now sit with how insane that is by our standards. The hardest, most dangerous job in your world. And on the rare day you succeed, you get no more than the person who slept by the fire. Imagine that being not only an injustice, but the law. Every instinct you have says, this should collapse. Why would anyone hunt if hunting earns you nothing? Why not just sit by the fire and let the suckers do the work? That's the question that should break the whole system. The system protected itself with a weapon you'd never expect. Not violence, not punishment, mockery. In 1969, an anthropologist named Richard Lee was living with the Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth still living close to the way every human once did. Christmas was coming, and Lee wanted to thank them, so he found the single biggest, fattest ox for miles and brought it to camp as a gift. And the camp mocked it mercilessly. They told him the ox was pathetic, skin and bones, that the meat would be worthless, that he'd been cheated, that he'd wasted everyone's time. For days, they ridiculed his gift. Lee was baffled. He'd inspected the animal himself. It was enormous. It was perfect. So he finally asked an old man what was going on, and the old man explained the rule that had been invisible to him the whole time. When a hunter brings home a big kill, the camp does not praise him. They insult the meat. They call the kill small and the animal sickly, and the bigger the kill, the harder they mock. Not because they're ungrateful, because a man who's praised for feeding everyone is a man who might start to think he's above them, and the moment someone believes he's above the group starts to die. When a young man kills much meat, another bushman told a different researcher, he comes to think of himself as a chief. We can't accept this, so we always speak of his meat as worthless. This way we cool his heart and make him gentle. That's what the mockery was, a tool. A precision instrument for keeping any one person from rising above the rest. Bohm cataloged these tools across dozens of societies, and they're always the same handful: public ridicule, disobedience, shaming, and, for the ones who won't be shamed, being driven out entirely. They weren't being cruel to their best hunters, they were leveling them, deliberately, relentlessly. Because in a world where survival depended on everyone staying bound together, the most dangerous thing imaginable was someone deciding they were better than everyone else. From the outside, it looks like the kindest, most generous society that has ever existed. Total sharing. No one left to starve. The strong giving everything to the weak. It wasn't kindness, and they weren't better people than you. Here's how we know. If this radical sharing came from pure goodness, if these were simply gentler humans than we are, then you'd expect everyone to share happily, freely, without being made to. That's not what the record shows. The record shows people trying to cheat. And the sharpest example has a name almost too perfect to be real. A team of anthropologists studied what Hadza men eat while they're still out foraging, before they ever get back to camp. They titled the paper, "Eat First, Share Later," because that's exactly what the men did. Out in the bush, away from camp, away from every demanding hand, they ate. The richest finds, the honey, the best bits, consumed quietly on the spot. They brought home what was left. The sharing was real. The generosity at camp was real. But it happened after a private meal that no one back home would ever see or get to claim. So they wanted the best for themselves exactly like you do. And when they could get away with it, unseen, they took it. They shared because back in camp, they couldn't get away with not sharing. The whole apparatus, the demanding, the taking, the mocking, existed because the natural human urge was to keep the best for yourself. You don't build machinery that powerful against a temptation that doesn't exist. The sharing wasn't proof they were saints. It was proof they weren't, and that they'd figured out how to survive anyway. So if everyone secretly wanted to cheat, why did the sharing win? Why are we, their descendants, built around this instinct at all? Because the ones who didn't share died. Picture two families on that ancient landscape. One hoards, keeps its kills, shares nothing. The other gives everything into the group and takes when it needs to. Now run them across a hard winter, a bad season, a drought. The hoarding family eats well until the day they don't. One failed hunt, one injury, and they have no one. They stored up meat, but they stored up no obligations. No one owes them. No one comes. And out there, alone, the gap between eating and starving is measured in days. The sharing family looks reckless, always giving the surplus away. But that surplus isn't wasted. It's invested. Every cut handed to a neighbor is a debt, a claim on the whole group when your own luck runs out. They're buying the one thing that keeps you alive in an unpredictable world. Other people who need you to survive. So when the bad season comes, the hoarder's line ends, and the sharer's line goes on. Generation after generation, the hoarding instinct gets buried with its owners, and the sharing instinct gets passed down to their children and their children's children, all the way down the line. And this is the answer to the question from before, why anyone bothered to hunt at all when the meat would just be taken. Because hunting was never how you fed yourself. Hunting was how you bought the group. Every kill you gave away was the whole camp owing you back on the day your luck ran out. The lazy man by the fire wasn't winning. The man who provided and gave it all away was buying the only insurance that existed. And on the bad day, it was the only thing that kept him alive. All the way down to you. You are descended from the ones who couldn't keep their own food. The relentless, almost involuntary human pull toward fairness. The flash of rage you feel when someone takes more than their share. The discomfort you feel holding something you won't share. That isn't morality you learned. It's 2 million years old. It's survival, worn so deep into us that it feels like instinct. Because it is. That's who decided who got to eat. Everyone did. By force. Because the groups that ate any other way aren't here to be asked. Which leaves one last question. If this instinct is so old, so deep, so total, what happened to it? Because we don't live like this now. We live in a world of locked doors and private wealth, where one person can have everything and the person beside them can have nothing, and that be perfectly, legally normal. So what broke the oldest rule we had? The answer isn't war or greed or some flaw in our nature. The answer is the most ordinary thing in the world. We learned to store food. For 2 million years, sharing won because food couldn't be kept. Meat rotted in days. There was no point hoarding what you couldn't hold on to, and every reason to convert your surplus into bonds with people who'd feed you later. Then came grain, and grain keeps. We can even point to where it starts. Next to the Dead Sea, in Jordan, there's a site called Dara. Dig into it and you find them. The oldest granaries on Earth. Roughly 11,300 years old, round mud structures about 3 meters across, built with floors suspended on stone pillars to lift the grain off the damp ground and keep the rodents out. They're older than farming itself. People built these before they'd even finished domesticating the plants they were storing. And that quiet little building changed everything, because for the first time in the human story, a person could hold a surplus that didn't spoil. Food could be stored. And the moment food could be stored, it could be owned. And the moment it could be owned, it could be withheld. For the first time, you could stand on a full granary and look at a starving neighbor, and keep the door shut, and nothing in the new world said you were wrong to. That's the trade. The equality you'd think of as primitive is the ancient thing, the deepest, oldest human arrangement there is, 2 million years deep, and the inequality we treat as simply the way the world works? That's the new invention. Barely 11,000 years old, a thin, recent layer over a mind built for something else entirely. We didn't lose the sharing instinct. It's still in you. Every time unfairness makes your skin crawl, every time you watch someone take more than their share and feel that flash of heat, that's it. Still running. The same machinery that ripped the meat from the hunter's hands. We just built a world it no longer fits.